Good morning, Mets fans, and welcome to a Monday edition of Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and the Mets dropped their first series of the year this past weekend, losing 2 out of 3 to the Washington Nationals. But it was an interesting series. Of course, opening day was Thursday, and then there was the off day on Friday, and so there are still a bunch of these odd off days mingling into the schedule before things get to their normal routine everyday grind that is the MLB season. But I want to talk about the Saturday and Sunday games in particular. We've talked already about opening day, home opener at least, last week. So let's talk about Saturday and Sunday today. Talk about the offensive explosion and the pitching problems that the Mets encountered this weekend. You know, it's a rare thing to lose 2 out of 3 to a team and feel good about it coming out of the other end of the loss. But I genuinely don't feel that bad about losing 2 out of 3 to the Nationals. And the reason I don't genuinely feel that bad about it is that both Saturday and Sunday, the Nationals bullpen showed that it is not trustworthy. I joked on Twitter that the Nats bullpen, the 2019 Nats bullpen at this point makes the 2008 Mets bullpen look really reliable. Their ERA coming into the weekend was like 9.53, Nats bullpen ERA that is, and it went up after the weekend series. That's hard to do, particularly when you're only pitching, 2-3 innings at a clip. So, you put up a couple of zeros and that number drops pretty quickly. But that has not been the case for the Nationals bullpen. And, kudos to the Mets hitters because they've taken advantage of that. And after Saturday's game, I think it was Saturday's game, or maybe it was yesterday, but regardless, Mickey Callaway was quoted after the game as saying, look, they're a good team, but so are we, and we trust our guys against their bullpen. And we trust our bullpen over their bullpen. And the Mets bullpen was not without its blemishes this weekend, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But Mickey makes a good point, and he puts some faith in his own guys to beat out the competition. I like that. I mean, I really genuinely do like that. And Mickey honestly had a better weekend managing than he did really over the first couple of days of the season. He didn't make any bonehead decisions. He double switched pretty well yesterday in particular. You can get angry about him taking guys out of the game and then the Mets coming back and having to rely on guys like Luis Guillorme in the lineup and the slumping Brandon Nimmo. But, both of them got hits for the Mets during their rallies, their comebacks in the afternoon. So I don't have an issue with the way Mickey managed the game yesterday. I thought he did really well on Saturday as well. And I have to tip my cap to Steven Matz on Saturday. I didn't get to watch a lot of the game, and I didn't get to see Matz pitch at all, but I got to listen to most of it because I was in the car. But I got to listen to most of the game, and it really sounded like Matz rebounded after a tough first inning. And it sounded like he pitched really well. He certainly threw a lot of pitches. But when you get that many strikeouts in such a short period of time, that is bound to happen. So when you're missing bats, you end up building up the pitch count and throwing more pitches than you'd like. So it happens. But I got to give him a little bit of kudos for finding the intestinal fortitude to continue through and to manage to give the Mets 5 scoreless innings of starting pitching on Saturday. Sadly, the same could not have been said for Zach Wheeler on Sunday. Yesterday, Wheeler was horrendous. That's the best way to say it. Horrendous is wrong. He could not find his command at all with any of his pitches, and that's a recipe for disaster. And I normally would get on Mickey for leaving the starter in the game too long, but just looking at what Matz was able to do on Saturday, I think Mickey was hoping that Wheeler could do the same and find himself after a difficult start. And Wheeler rewarded him a little bit with a pretty good third inning, and I think it was a pretty good fourth inning also. So he bounced back a tiny bit, did Wheeler, but then the fifth inning, the wheels came off, and I think it was the fifth, and he started walking guys. I mean, Wheeler had 7 walks, I think, and Tim Peterson had 5, and the Mets had 16 walks yesterday as a staff, and that's That's you're not going to win games like that. And yet, the Mets made it interesting. Trailing 12-1 at one point yesterday, they were able to claw back, and the game final score was 12-9. But two important things happened yesterday. Number one, you saw that Davey Martinez has no confidence in his bullpen because he trotted Scherzer back out there with a 12-1 lead in the 7th inning. That's insane, right? For a guy that's going to throw as many important innings for a team that intends to be playoff contenders as Max Scherzer will likely have to throw down the stretch, to waste an inning against the Mets with a 12-1 lead in April is nuts, and it's the sort of thing that we would get on our own manager for doing. But Martinez clearly doesn't have faith in his bullpen, and he's right to not have faith, because that's the other point to make. The Mets bats jumped all over the Nats bullpen. Trevor Rosenthal comes out of the pen, throws gasoline on the fire. They just kept bringing in relievers who were ineffective, and the Mets bats took advantage. Over the weekend, I ended up giving not one but 2 game balls to Pete Alonso, who now has 4 on the season. He leads the team. Also leads the team in home runs. So Pete Alonso is having himself a fine young season to this point, and it's been fun to watch. The rest of the offense, over the weekend, how can you complain about it? How can you complain about the approach on Saturday with the Mets coming back from a 2-run deficit after choking up the lead and Familia being ineffective, giving up 2 home runs in the same game, in the same inning rather? It was the first time in his entire career he's ever done that. And I found it interesting that they pointed out on the broadcast Saturday, that Familia's home run that he gave up was the first home run that he gave up at Citi Field since the 2016 wild card game. And yes, that was Connor Gillespie. So just crazy. I mean, we think that Familia is this terrible reliever, but clearly he's not. I mean, I think we just get a little bit annoyed at how inconsistent he can be. But look, he had a bad outing on Saturday. I actually liked the way Mickey Callaway framed it when he was talking to the press after the game. Just like, look, hey, it's going to happen. You're going to have bad outings every now and then. And he did today, and he'll be fine. I'm not worried. I kind of like the way he just kind of shrugged it off. And didn't put too much pressure on Familia to figure out what went wrong on Saturday. But regardless, I feel pretty positive about this weekend series, despite losing this series to the Nats. I take a lot of positive things from the games, from the series, and I think the Nationals are running scared right now. I think they are so afraid of their bullpen, and they should be. And the only thing that's a little bit scary about that for everybody else in the NL East is that Craig Kimbrell remains a free agent. And while Andy Martino has reported that the Mets continue to keep an eye on him, Kimbrell's certainly not going to close with the Mets if they were to sign him. And he clearly wants to be a closer. It's why he wants 6 years, $70 billion or whatever he asked for in the offseason. I'm in the minority here, but I think Kimbrell's best days are behind him, and I think that's the reason he didn't get the contract that he wants. But I don't think he's going to settle for a setup role, with the Mets. I do think, however, that he's a real good fit for the Nationals. So that's the one caution with the Nationals bullpen being so bad, is that I think they'll go out and get Kimbrell to try to shore things up a little bit. One final point, Andy Martino, I mentioned a moment ago, he continues to report that the Mets are keeping a very close eye on Dallas Keuchel. I find this to be very intriguing, and I think that would be an absolutely brilliant move to try and get him now, because he will not cost that much. He, at this point, has to be desperate for a job. He's throwing simulated games every 5th day to keep himself on some sort of a routine. But, the further this stretches into the season, the more likely Keuchel will be to take a cheaper and cheaper deal. If I were the Mets, I would sign him for 2 years. Give him 2 years. The first year being prorated, of course, because he won't have played for the first part of the season. But give him a 2-year deal, lock him up for next year. That gives him a little bit more of a reason to give the team a better discount now, assuming that he's going to start extremely late, like at this point probably mid-May would be at the earliest for him, and maybe even June 1st. But I think the Mets should absolutely be out there signing Dallas Keuchel right now, because he's a better option than Jason Vargas in the rotation. And he's an innings eater, and that's really what the Mets need with the way that Wheeler and Matz have been throwing up to this point. They need a guy who they can throw out there every fifth day, Bartolo Colon, and no matter what, give you 6 innings of quality start type baseball. A 4 to 4.5 ERA. That 3 runs, 6 innings number that equals the quality start. So anyway, this was an extremely long video, and I'm sorry, but a lot happened over the weekend, and I wanted to chat about it. So no game tonight. The Mets welcome in the Twins tomorrow for a 3-game set at, I think it's 3 games, or maybe it's 2, at Citi Field. But in any event, I'm looking forward to seeing the revamped Minnesota Twins, who are a much better team than they were last year. And by the way, Jacob deGrom on the mound for the Mets tomorrow night. So no video tomorrow, but I will be back on Wednesday to recap the deGrom start and the kickoff of that Twins series. So until then, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at Mr_Met. And as always, let's go Mets.